Hello, everybody. My name is Liu Yi. I'm from Jiangxi University of Finance and Economics. Welcome back to my class of International Macroeconomics. Today, we're going to learn about the benefits of fixing exchange rate. If we focus on developing countries, there are some other benefits of fixed exchange rate. A widely accepted advantage is tax prevents governments from printing money to finance government expenditure. Under such financing schemes, the central bank are required to monetize government's deficits. For example, giving money to the government in exchange for debt, this process increases the money supply and leads to high inflation. In fact, the source of government revenue is an inflation tax. It is known as seigniorage. And the inflation tax levied on the public holding money. Let's talk more about the seigniorage. It generally refers to the income obtained because of the government's monopoly on printed money. So, seigniorage is not a tax in the common sense. It is a special economic conception, refers to the difference between the face value of the currency and the cost of creating the currency. Since the right to mintage is usually held only by the ruler, it is a special kind of tax revenue and an important source of income for the government. Since the cost of printing money is extremely low, while the money itself has purchasing power, the government can use it in exchange for goods and services. Hence, the success of collecting seigniorage depends on whether a country's real demand of currency can increase efficiency during the collection period. When a country's real demand for money increases, it provides the government with some free resources by giving additional money into circulation, and the gain of this purchasing power is the meaning of seigniorage. You can understand the seigniorage better through knowing about how to calculate it. At any instant, money grows at a rate of delta M over M and delta P over P equals to pi. If a household holds M over P in real money balance, then a moment later, the price have increased by pi. A fraction pi of the real value of the original M over P is lost to inflation. The cost of the inflation tax to the household is pi multiply M over P. Thus, the amount that the inflation tax transfers from household to the government is called seigniorage. To be specific, for example, if I hold $100, the price level is currently 1, and the inflation is 1%. Then after one period, the initial $100 is worth only $99 in real inflation-adjusted term, and the prices are 1.01. The money supply expands from $100 to 101, and this would provide financing worth of $1 to the government. But if a country chooses peg, then it cannot randomly adjust the money supply. What is more, the central bank may run the peg badly and result in a currency crisis. Eventually, the exchange rate will fall freely and hyperinflation will break out. Like the crisis Argentina and Mexico suffered in the 1990s. By contrast, if a country chose float, its central bank can print any amount of money. And if it can achieve various inflation results, the nominal ACER refers to whether monetary, exchange rate, or inflation targets are promised by the government. It also ensures certain monetary policy goal in the long run. However, the country may not realize their promises. Let's look at some real data to explore the relationship between a country's inflation and the exchange rate regimes. As column 1 and 2 show, floating has an inflation rate of 9.9%, and that in the advanced country is 3.5%. In column 3 and 4, we can see in emerging markets and the developing countries, a fixed regime finally leads to lower inflation, but isn't an immediate outcome. To conclude, fixed exchange rates are not necessary or sufficient conditions to ensure good inflation outcomes. Especially for developing countries have suffered from high inflations, pegs seem to be the only credible anchor. Exchange rate regimes can also influence a country's national wealth. The home country's total external wealth is the sum total of assets minus liabilities expressed in local currency. A small change, delta E, in the exchange rate, as all else equal, affects the value of EAF and ELF expressed in local currency. A depreciation increases national wealth when it increases the value of net foreign currency credit position. On the other side, appreciation decreases wealth when it increases the value of a net foreign currency debt position. We can easily establish a more complicated short-run economic model. Wealth shocks will affect the demand for goods. For example, consumers might spend more when they have more wealth because their consumption function includes total wealth. Firms can also borrow more easily when their wealth increases. Hence, their investment functions will become high, or total wealth. If a country has a negative net position in foreign currency assets, then fixed exchange rate would be a better choice, because exchange rate changes will affect its national wealth. To be specific, if a foreign currency asset exceeds foreign currency liabilities, the country's wealth will increase when the exchange rate depreciates. An example would be the US. But if its foreign currency liabilities exceed foreign currency asset, the currency wealth will decrease when the exchange rate depreciates. Argentina will be an example. The following chart may make more sense. Countries in the figure all experienced crisis and large depreciation against the US dollar or other major currencies from 1993 to 2003. The depreciation rates were at least 50%. Some of them even achieved 75%. The main reason was large fractions of their external debt were dominated in foreign currencies. When suffered negative valuation effects, their external wealth to fall. Some countries such as Indonesia suffered huge losses. This chart shows the correlation between wealth loss on net foreign debt and the real output loss after a large depreciation. The wealth impact is estimated by multiplying net debt dominated in foreign currency by the size of the depreciation. We could see if the wealth loss was huger, the decrease in real output would be larger as well. A special term related to country's external liability is original sin, referring to a country's inability to borrow its own currency. Its This phenomenon appeared for many times in international investment. Especially poor countries can hardly borrow in their own currencies in global capital markets. That is because domestic currency debts were frequently diluted in real value by periods of high inflation. Creditors were then unwilling to hold such debt. Creditors were then willing to lend only in foreign currency in order to hold debt that promised a more stable long-term value. Due to the specification of original sin, only a few developed countries can issue external liability denominated in their own currencies. In the financial centers and the Eurozones, the proportion of external liabilities denominated in foreign currency is less than 10%. In other developed countries, it's about 70%, while in developing countries, external liabilities dominated in foreign currency are almost 100%. Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, and Uruguay are habitual sinners, are able to issue some debt in their own currencies recently. The recent trends show remarkable progress in reducing the problem compared to 1990s. A more feasible or even only Plan B is developing countries limit the fluctuation of exchange rate to minimize or eliminate valuation effect. The lesson from above discussion is in countries that cannot borrow in their own currencies, especially for developing countries, fixed exchange rates are more useful than floating. To summarize, fixing may be the only credible way to attain and maintain a nominal acre. Particularly, it's important in emerging markets and developing countries with weak institutions, because they are usually with independent central banks, strong temptation to use the inflation tax, and poor reputations for monetary stability. In addition, developing countries cannot decrease their liabilities and increase their wealth through valuation effects. That is, because the external liabilities of developing countries are mainly measured by foreign currencies. Moreover, fixing may also be the only way to avoid large fluctuations in external wealth. It is a tough nut in emerging markets and developing countries with high levels of liability dollarization. Such countries may be unwilling to let their exchange rate float, and this is so-called fear to floating, named by economists. However, the choice of exchange rate regimes is not uniform. While a country's current fixed exchange rate system is resulting in losses, it may rejudge its exchange rate regime. Britain, for example, made the decision to withdraw from EMER when it discovered the cost outweighs the benefits. On the other hand, additional benefits of fixing or higher cost of floating will lower the willingness of choosing a fixed exchange rate. In this figure, if the fixed line moves down, choosing a fixed rate can be rational, even at lower levels of symmetry or integration. Based on the analysis above, there is an extended discussion. Whose original sin is it on Earth? And are the benefits of dollar-centric or monetary system outweigh the cost? The real situation currently is the gold reserve of US makes up half of the world. This is the foundation of the dollar hegemony. At the same time, the US continually increases currency account deficit and external liabilities. What's more, US continually prints dollars to depreciate dollar and collect seigniorage globally. As a result, the foundation of being the world's currency has been shaken. Can you imagine what will happen if numbers of countries draw back gold in advance